Bill Clinton, number 42. Born to William Jefferson Blythe and Virginia Cassidy Blythe on April 19, 1946, Clinton grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas. His father died in a car accident before Bill was even born, so Clinton lived under the guidance of his grandmother, Edith Cassidy, and his mother. When Clinton was 4, his mother married Roger Clinton, a car salesman and abusive alcoholic. Bill took his stepfather's surname. Clinton's political career started off in high school under the guidance of school principal Johnny May Mackey. She encouraged him to be the best leader he could and to push the limits of his potential. When he was 17, Clinton attended a Boys Nation political convention in Washington, D.C., where 2 high school students from each state participated in a mock government. It was here that he met his personal hero and political giant, John F. Kennedy. This meeting inspired Clinton and led to him setting up his political career to mirror that of JFK. After graduating from Yale Law School, Clinton got a teaching position at the University of Arkansas. In 1978, at the tender age of 32, Clinton ran for governor of Arkansas. Upon his election, Clinton became the 4th youngest governor ever, youngest in the history of Arkansas. Clinton used his deep political background to propel himself to the Oval Office. Clinton's presidential campaign against incumbent President George H.W. Bush is seen as a political masterpiece by most historians. He overcame a president who at one point had a 90% overall approval rating and stepped into the White House at the age of 46. Most people believe that the action that sealed the win for Clinton was adding Democrat Al Gore to his ticket. Gore was a senator from Tennessee who helped Clinton put a stranglehold on the majority of Southern votes. Clinton served in the White House from 1993 to 2001.
In 1993, the storm of the century hit the East Coast. It was a large cyclonic storm that formed over the Gulf of Mexico on March 12th and dissipated 3 days later in the North Atlantic Ocean after stretching from Central America to Canada. Areas in the Deep South received a lot of snow, such as Birmingham, Alabama, which got 16 inches in areas. Low barometric pressure and high winds caused tornadoes that killed dozens, bringing the death total up to 318. The Superhighway Summit was held at UCLA on January 11, 1994. It was the first conference that brought together the heads of industry, government, and academics, and also began the national debate about the information superhighway. The keynote speaker was Vice President Al Gore. On April 19, 1995, a rental truck exploded in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. It destroyed a third of the building, which had a daycare inside, and caused severe damage to surrounding buildings. It killed 168 people, including 19 children, and injured around 800 more in what would become the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in American history. Timothy McVeigh was found guilty and then later executed in 2001. His partner Terry Nicholas is serving multiple life sentences in federal prison. Michael and Lori Fortier testified against Timothy and Terry in exchange for only a 12-year prison term for Michael and immunity for Lori. Romer v. Evans is a landmark Supreme Court case that had to do with sexual orientation in state laws. The court ended up with a 6-3 decision that stated that preventing protected status based on homosexuality or bisexuality did not satisfy the Equal Protection Clause, and the amendment failed. The news of the scandal between Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky first broke on January 17, 1998. The story went into the mainstream media on January 21st and was followed by denials from Bill Clinton, including the famous quote, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman," with his wife standing behind him the whole time. Over the following several months, there was still a debate going on about what happened, but nothing was certain because Monica refused to testify. Later, she gave her testimony for immunity and also handed over a semen-stained dress. Then, on August 17, 1998, Clinton admitted to the nation that he had inappropriate relations with Monica. This scandal overshadowed an otherwise successful presidency for Bill Clinton. On July 17, 1996, a Boeing 747-100 exploded just 12 minutes after takeoff. It killed all 230 people on board and became the third deadliest aviation accident on U.S. territory. There was a lot of speculation that this was the result of a terrorist act. After 4 years of investigating, an explosion in the fuel tank was reported to be the probable cause. This report led to new requirements for aircraft safety, and there are still conspiracy theories such as a missile strike by terrorists or that a U.S. Navy vessel shot it down and the government covered it up. Dolly was a female sheep and also the first mammal to be cloned on July 5th of 1996. She was cloned in the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. She died on February 14th, 2003.
Bill Clinton had an array of domestic actions. Congress was majorly Republican while he was in office, so many policies in the legislature had trouble passing. He started in 1993 by passing the Family and Medical Leave Act. This act mandated unpaid sick leave for pregnancy, serious conditions, and injuries. Also, in 1993, he passed the Brady Bill, which imposed a 3 to 5 day waiting period for background checks after the purchase of a handgun. This was one of the first major gun control or safety acts.
Yeah, I think I'll go with this one, sir.
Alright. I'm going to need to see some identification.
Oh, sure thing. Right here, sir.
Alright, looks good. You can come back in 3 days to pick it up.
What? Why 3 days? I want my gun now.
Well, Bill Clinton just passed the Brady Act, so all handgun purchases require 3 days to do background checks. So you can come back then to pick it up.
Fine, I'll see you in 3 days.
Another important piece of legislature was the Earned Income Tax Credit extension. This extended tax credit and returns to hardworking Americans, especially those with lower incomes. Later on in his presidency, in 1996, he again helped the hardworking American by raising the hourly minimum wage to $5.15, which was an increase of 90 cents. Also in 1996, one of the most controversial actions was the Defense of Marriage Act, which defined legal marriage as between one man and one woman, protecting traditional marriage. Along the same lines, but in the opposite direction, was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy that Clinton tried to pass. This would have allowed for homosexuals to serve in the armed forces as long as they were not open about it. In 1997, the president set out to fix American debt and budget. He passed the Balanced Budget Act, which helped spending and payments, saving $44 billion initially, an overall cut of $160 billion. Clinton did a great job with the American economy, with the most consecutive growth per month ever. The economy soared, unemployment dropped, new jobs were made, and debt was both paid off, and a system was placed that would continually pay off debt.
On October 4th, 1993, one of the biggest conflicts during Clinton's time in office occurred in a battle in Somalia. Clinton sent a task force over to the Somali capital of Mogadishu to capture Somali warlord Mohammed Aidid. The task force was ambushed, resulting in the deaths of 18 American servicemen. As a result of the embarrassing defeat, Clinton declared that all American troops would be out of Somalia by March 31st of 1994, and Clinton did fulfill his promise. Another big conflict during Clinton's presidency was the fighting in the Balkan states. On February 23, 1999, Serbia agreed with the UN and NATO to give complete autonomy to the province of Kosovo. The Serbs, however, went back on their promise and continued to control the Kosovars. This led to strong NATO attacks, led by the vote of Clinton, which resulted in the surrender of the Serbs and the ultimate liberation of Kosovo on June 10, 1999.
Where are you saving them to?
One of the biggest events during Clinton's presidency was the embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. On August 7, 1998, a group of al-Qaeda terrorists planted truck bombs in both the Nairobi and Dar es Salaam U.S. embassies. When the bombs went off, more than 200 people died, at least 15 of whom were American. Clinton declared war on al-Qaeda and their leader Osama bin Laden after these bombings. While no major actions were completed, Clinton set a strict policy on dealing with al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. Probably the biggest and most influential foreign action taken by Clinton was the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, signed on December 8, 1993. This trade negotiation between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico allowed completely free trade between the borders of those countries and led to greatly improved relations across the board. This trade agreement is still upheld today. Another notable agreement signed during the Clinton administration was the Israeli-Palestinian Declaration of Principles. Signed by Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat, this agreement, oversaw by Clinton himself on September 13, 1993, agreed to give the Palestinians self-government in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. This was a very influential deal because it marked the first time that the two sides have ever reached an agreement.
Your husband and Bill Clinton have become good friends.
That's right. My husband, Bill Clinton, and I have become great friends, and Bill visits us every summer, and we don't agree politically, but we don't talk politics. And I think you'd have to understand, I read someplace, before you're critical of someone, you should remember that they did not have the advantages you had as a child. A loving mother and father. Bill's father wasn't around. And I think that he thinks of George a little bit like the father he didn't have. And he's very loving to him. And I really appreciate that. And when they went on that long tsunami trip, George told me Bill insisted he stay in the bed, and Bill insisted that he was taken care of, and that was really nice. I love Bill Clinton. Maybe not his politics, but I love Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton had a great presidency and had most things right. I have to agree with Mrs. Bush on what she said. He was an overall success and a good person, but his personal background problems overshadowed his greatness. If only he had overcome his problems, maybe the world would remember him as a better president, and maybe his presidency would even be one of the greatest. He had great domestic successes as well as with most of his policies. It's a shame.